welcome to the Access to Inspiration podcast, the show where you can get inspiration from people who may be unlike you. I'm your host, Sue Stockdale, and I'm excited to introduce you today to our final guest in this series, Palwasha Siddiqi. Born and raised in Afghanistan when she was 7 years old, her family fled the civil war and became refugees in Pakistan for over 10 years. They eventually moved back to Afghanistan, and from there she moved across to the USA to study at university, and now has a successful corporate career, as well as developing her coaching expertise. Her story is one of inspiration, resilience, and hope, and I think you'll find it heartwarming. Welcome to the podcast, Palwasha.
Thank you so much for having me. Nice to connect.
I'm fascinated to find out about your story and your journey. You know, this theme for this series is 21st century change makers. And I know that change from you is involved living in a number of different countries. And your life began back in Afghanistan. So for our listener who perhaps doesn't have a sense of what being a child in Afghanistan is like, I wonder if you can paint us a picture of what it was like before the age of 7 when you were in Afghanistan. Tell us what that was like for you.
I had a really good childhood up until the age of 6 before the war started. Yeah, my family was middle, upper class. We owned our own house. We had a little car. So anything that you picture for a happy family, I remember going to picnics to the valley with my family, going to school. You know, in the morning, my mom and dad would pack up the car. They both worked. Kids went to school, so they would drop us off and then they would go off to work. So the first early years were just very happy memories is what I remember. The country was beautiful. It was peaceful. And sometimes when I look at pictures from back then and I compare it to photos in the West, it's very, very similar. Like my mom dressed very liberally, like she wore mini skirts. There was no scarf and she went to work. It was very progressive place as well, Afghanistan. But unfortunately, the years of war took it backwards, but I have really good memories from the start.
So it's lovely to get that sense of early childhood. And then things changed. So tell us what happened when the Civil War began.
Things changed for me and my family really in a matter of day almost. And I remember this very vividly, even though I was very young. I was probably 6 at the time. I had just finished school. I believe I was in first grade and staying with my mom in her office. So it was just a normal day. And then at the end of the day, we'd go back home together. And the unrest began when we were still in the office. And the news came around that the local Mujahideen had taken over the city. And so what I remember is just everyone running around within the office, especially women, to try to build skirts for themselves or scarves from the uniforms that they were wearing because of the fear of going outside with a miniskirt and being shot and being killed, essentially. So that was the day that pretty much changed everything for us. My mom couldn't go back to work after that. She couldn't really live a life that she lived before that. Same for us. And the unrest begun. And this was 89. And then we were still in Afghanistan for another year. So we lived there during the Civil War. And at some point during the war, our house got hit by a rocket. So everything went up into flames. We pretty much lost everything. And that was the time when my parents decided that it was time to go somewhere else in search of safety, but also in search of better life for us. Education was number one priority for my family and my parents to provide for us. And that was when we decided to move to Pakistan. And we became refugees in Pakistan. I pretty much grew up in Pakistan. So I started and finished high school. And then in 2001, when the American invasion happened, my family, like many others, thought that it was the end of the war and that we were going to go back home. So they also packed up and moved back to Afghanistan. That was in 2003. So they still live there.
I'm in awe of how you describe that experience in terms of your house being hit by a rocket and then we chose to move, as if it's kind of an everyday experience that many people have never lived through. So you were forced to change at that moment. As a young child, what did you imagine was going on then? How did you come to terms with actually being forced to move and flee?
The way that I remember is that everything was happening so fast that I didn't even have time to comprehend what's happening. It was one day we had to leave the office with my mom in such a rush and hurry, and I was looking around and it was chaos everywhere. Then about a week later, my mom and my dad were planning on how to get out of all of this. Later, we lose our house. It was just all go, go, go. All we knew was that we had to find a way to stay safe. It was just thinking about the next day. How do we spend the night in a safe place? And where do we go next to find shelter? How do we continue to feed ourselves? So it was just fighting for survival almost on a daily basis. So I think as a child, I just didn't even have that time to digest and really understand what was happening. Instead, it was just making sure that we kept going every day.
And I'm imagining that as you're speaking, that your parents are caregivers. They're the ones that we trust and look up to, that you must have had a great degree of confidence and trust in your parents to look after you through those challenging times.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. At the time when all of this was happening, I am the oldest child and I had a younger sister as well. So a lot of the time, I also remember my mom also putting more confidence in me to take care of me because she had to take care of my sister. And the day that our house got hit by rocket, my dad was actually in the city, so he got stuck there, and we were stuck in the house. And we had to essentially pack up and leave, not knowing where he was and if he was going to eventually find us or not. We left with our neighbors because they essentially came to get us out of the house. Deep down, I did have this feeling that we would be reunited somehow. And it was a pretty long journey to get to where our house was, to the city where my aunt lived. And we pretty much walked the whole time. So because there was war going on, you couldn't just take a car or drive. You had to go through the back doors, and Kabul is a valley. So we had to go through some mountains through a safer way to get to the city. And we were separated from my dad for the first couple of days. But then I remember waking up one morning, and just to paint the picture for you, it's not just us, it's like hundreds of people making the same journey, trying to get to a safer place. And on the way, I remember a rocket flying and someone saying, dive down on the ground to stay safe. And then we would stay there for 5-10 minutes and then we would get up. Some of us would get up, some of us would not get up. And then we would just keep walking, hiding behind walls and staying overnight in people's houses who had fled as well. So they were just open. And one of the nights we ended up staying at someone's basement. And in the morning, I woke up hearing my dad because he had followed the crowd and he knew that we would probably be going the same way. So he came in our search. So yeah, I remember thinking, and my mom telling me, your dad is after us. Not that she knew, she was probably comforting us saying that, but we were reunited and we knew that they were going to find a way to keep us safe and get us out of the situation that we were in.
As you're looking back now on that early childhood situation that you had to encounter, what do you think are some of the learnings that you take from that experience, if at all, to bring to your day-to-day existence now?
I think one main lesson that I've learned is about human resilience. I think we all have extraordinary amounts of resilience that, especially when we are in difficult situation, comes out and enables us to get through war or get through, the pandemic. It's a superpower, I think, that we all have that we can nurture. I try to remind myself of that every time I go through difficult situations, even now, that I made it through that. And so I have this strength and I have this resilience in me. It's like a muscle that you need to keep nurturing. And so one of the ways that I found that works for me to do that is really being clear on my purpose in life. What are my values? What is important to me? And why those things are important to me, and staying clear on that and what my life is about. what I want my life to be about. And staying focused on that has enabled me and my family back then to get through what we were going through. And I experienced today that doing the same exercise and staying focused on what's important and what my passion and what my purpose in life is gets me through any kind of challenge, no matter what it is.
You have that touchstone of your purpose to guide you as you're encountering challenges these days, by the sounds of it. And any of us face challenges and obstacles along the way. I'm curious to know, how would you describe what your purpose is?
My purpose, it has changed over time. Right? When I was a young kid, it was all about learning for me and education, especially being born as a girl, as a woman in such a conservative society. I was told from a young age all these things that I couldn't do just because I was a woman. So my passion, my purpose was learning and getting educated. And over time, as I have grown into where I am today now, there's an element of giving back to me now, which is why I'm so passionate about coaching. And my purpose in life now is to empower others to go after their dreams or what they want to achieve, and inspire and empower them to essentially dream big and go after their dreams. Because I've seen this work in my life, right? Like what I've achieved has been influenced quite a lot through either direct or indirect coaching and mentorship and the support that I have had throughout my life. And so I have experienced firsthand the power of it. And now I want to give back. And today, the best way that I can think about it is through coaching.
Well, I'm sure we'll talk more about that in a moment. Hi, it's me again. I hope you will agree that no matter what life throws at us, we can be positive and find good in the experience. And Palwasha's got plenty more to say in the second half of this episode. If you're enjoying it, you can also find another 50 episodes almost of inspirational stories featuring guests from 15 countries. So hop on over to accesstoinspiration.org and you'll find them there. Now back to Palwasha. I'm curious for the listener to help them to fill in the gap from moving back to Afghanistan after spending a number of years in Pakistan as a refugee to now being obviously a senior executive in a global multinational and a very successful corporate career. How did that happen?
When I moved back, or when my family moved back to Afghanistan, I had just finished high school and I spoke a bit of English at the time. Maybe I had taken a few classes the year before, maybe compared to others. I understood and could communicate a bit. And when we moved back to Afghanistan, we essentially had to restart our life all over again. We didn't have the house. It was just the land. We were not that well off. So my family needed support financially to keep going and to rebuild their life in Kabul. So I decided that I would get a job. And given that I knew some basic English, that gave me a lot of good chances. And so I ended up working for an American fashion designer in Kabul, being her assistant. But I still had this passion of learning, going to school, and growing in that way. Her name was Sarah, and it became clear for her. And she kind of made it her goal to help me to continue to learn as well. And she would introduce me to different nonprofit organizations that had training programs, official, non-official. And so through her, I came across a nonprofit organization called Business Council for Peace. They work with entrepreneurs in post-conflict countries to help them create jobs, because more jobs mean less violence. So they're focused on economic development. And I took a few trainings with them in business management. And I got a couple of mentors through this nonprofit organization who asked me, what do you want from life? What do you want to achieve from here on? And I was very interested in going to university abroad. And so they essentially helped me find my way and secure a scholarship to attend university in the States. So I ended up going to Bucknell University in Pennsylvania. And that was essentially the start of another very big life-changing moment for me. I did not know what to expect. Some people growing up, they at least watch movies about the West and they have some pictures and images. And I just remember getting on the plane, pretty much my first time being alone on my own and getting on a plane and not knowing what was next for me. And it was probably one of the most challenging things that I had done. There was just so much fear, but at the same time, a lot of excitement because I knew that good things were waiting for me on the other side. So that was the start of my journey. So I finished my bachelor's degree in the States. Then I ended up joining American Express, moved to New York while working with them, also got my executive MBA. So I lived and worked in New York for about 7 years. And then decided that it was time for me to change again. Like I didn't have enough. So now I think I'm kind of, wanting every 5 to 7 years of wanting a bit of a change in life, just because I know that it helps me grow in so many ways that I probably wouldn't if I stayed in the same place, same situation. So then I decided to move to London, and now I've been here for about 3 years, still working at Amex.
Wonderful. Such an amazing story. And the sense of you entering that aeroplane and wondering what's ahead with the fear and trepidation tinged with the excitement. I'm wondering, as you recall your first experience in America, were there any particular things that stood out for you about how that culture was different to what you'd experienced before?
Yeah, I think everything was just so different than anything I had experienced. The university I went to was in a very small town, gorgeous, beautiful. And the town was so small, nothing was happening outside. So everything was on campus. From the minute that I got to the school, I was just amazed by simple things like the amount of greenery around me, because all that I was used to was, I don't know, like a place that was destroyed by war. And then all of a sudden I come to this very well-groomed campus, and I just can't even believe that it looks so beautiful. And the closest thing that I had in my memory so that I could match it to was cartoons, little houses, beautiful houses, greenery everywhere. But from there on, I mean, everything was just so different. The amount of freedom, like that was the first thing that I noticed is I always lived in some kind of a fear when I was back home, because I was a girl. I couldn't leave the house after a certain hour, or I couldn't leave the house so early. Going on my own to school and going on my own to work, I was taking a level of risk, especially at the early years when we moved back from Pakistan. Taliban presence was still felt a bit around, and lots of kidnapping was happening at the time, especially schoolgirls, because they were trying to make a lesson for others so they don't let their daughters go to school. So it was a lot of risk taking every single day that I was doing. And to leave that and then all of a sudden have so much freedom and abundance of a kind of just life that I had never experienced before. Amazing cafeteria, so much food available. We had a wall of cereal. There was like 20 different types of cereal. and just getting used to that. I was still learning the language because my English was still not good. So just slowly picking that up. And at first I was very quiet, just trying to absorb everything. So when I look back, everything that I went through was just so, so different. But I just remember being very curious and very, very open. And I couldn't wait to catch up on everything, right? Like hit a day when it was all normal to me and I didn't feel so behind, but I just loved every day of it as well.
You're typifying for me the theme of the Access to Inspiration podcast, be inspired by people who may be unlike you. And going into that environment, which was unlike what you're experienced by, it sounds to me like you were being inspired by it. You were curious and interested to find out more and what was possible for you in America.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was using all of my senses in a way they had been awakened in a way that they hadn't been before. So all the new things every single day. And today I try to still have an element of new things in life, because I think that's when you get used to the everyday hustle and bustle, and you kind of forget to stop and be amazed by something. So I try to, having learned what that does to you and the way that it wakes you up to the nature around you, to the life around you. And so I try to ingest new things here and there to keep myself be amazed by the world.
It's sounding brilliant. Now, coming back to present day, you talked about coaching being an important part of what inspires you today and what you want to have as giving back to others. How did you come across coaching?
I've had quite a lot of coaching throughout my experience. It has been indirect coaching through the mentors. So starting with a nonprofit organization that, eventually helped me go to the US. I got a couple of mentors, but I also got a foster family, a host family who I'm very close with. And they have been my champions, and they have been kind of standing on the sidelines for me, trusting in me, believing in me. Because there were definitely times when I thought, like, what am I doing? This is way bigger than I can manage. And their support has pushed me every single day. And even when I didn't believe myself, when I looked at them believing in me, it just kind of gave me a motivation to keep going. So I've experienced coaching for some time. And because I have seen the firsthand impact that it can bring to someone's life, I want to be able to give back in that same way.
And how are you taking that forward, that desire to give back through coaching?
I've finally decided at the start of the lockdown. So it has been something that I've been thinking about a lot, but I took advantage of the opportunity and I completed some trainings in the field of coaching. And at the moment, I am working on my websites. Hopefully, I get it live over the next month or so. And I'll kick it off that way. But today, the way that I deliver a lot of coaching at work, because something else that I'm very passionate about, which I think is very similar to coaching, is leadership. I love inspiring others at work, whether it's my team or the other wider organization. So I do deliver some coaching today as well at work, specifically to help get us through the pandemic and focus on facing these challenging times.
I'm imagining how you viewed the pandemic and lockdown and the necessary changes that one had to make with probably ease compared to earlier experiences in your life, using all of that resilience that you have.
Yeah, I think, I'm not going to lie, it's ups and downs. It has been very challenging, the impact on mental health, especially. But I do draw back, yes, on my old experiences. When I'm having a bad day and I'm feeling very low, I remind myself of the things that I went through previously and reminding myself that if I got through that I could get through this as well. And also having my family, my family lives in Kabul. They have little access to doctors or vaccines or all the things that we have access here. And so it just keeps it very real for me. Even though I have this life now, when I talk to them, it grounds me how fortunate I am and how fortunate we are here. So just seeing their life and what they're going through every day, then I get grateful, and it has made it easy for me to get through the pandemic.
So with all of your life's experience, the insights that you've gained, the successes you've had, Palwasha, if you were offering any insights or wisdom to listeners who might be coping with challenges or thinking about how they could make change in the future, what might be some of the things that spring to your mind?
I think I will re-emphasize this, knowing what your purpose is in life. I think it's a secret superpower that we can all draw on. I think for me, what life is about is constantly getting to know ourselves, who we are really deep down, not what the society wants us to be, how to act, what to go after. Just really reflecting closely on a regular basis, because we also change, of course, right? With our experiences, what we go through in life, really truly staying connected to who you are, what your values are in life, and what you want your life to be about. And any challenges that's thrown at you, and I've seen it in my own life, you will be able to overcome if you have a very clear vision of what it is that you want to achieve in this world and in this life.
Well, I think you've very eloquently described there a really important point for our listener to consider is getting a sense of their purpose and taking time to reflect. And I'm sure that your story today has inspired them to reflect on their own situation in a very different way. If people want to find out more about you, Palwasha, and connect with you on social media, how might they do that?
At the moment, the best way to connect with me is through LinkedIn. So Palwasha Siddiqi. And hopefully that's the platform where I will share everything else that's coming in the future as well in terms of related to coaching.
Wonderful. It's been a real privilege to speak to you today, to hear about your experience and how you've used that to inspire change within yourself. And now, of course, in future, be inspiring change in others through utilising your coaching skills and helping everybody to get clearer about their purpose. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me, Sue.
Well, I'm sure you'll agree that that was an amazing story that Palwasha had to share with us. My co-founder and I created this series with the simple purpose of bringing to you stories from inspiring people. And no matter their background or experience, we believe that they are all extraordinary in some way and can provide us with free energy when we hear their insights. Thanks for listening today. We'll be back in a few weeks again with our new series with more conversations to share. Until then, take care and keep telling others about our Access to Inspiration podcast.